Well, time now to bring you our focus report that today comes from Ukraine, where the government that came to power in 2014 vowed to put an end to corruption. Well, it's taken a long time, but the country's anti-corruption bureau is now fully operational. It's just carried a sting operation out, catching at least one MP demanding big bribes. Things, though, didn't turn out exactly as the bureau had hoped. France 24's Gulliver Cragg reports.
The Member of Parliament gives the signal, and agent Kateryna, here pixelated, crosses the restaurant. The politician believes she is a businesswoman based in the United Arab Emirates. His bodyguard follows her into a private dining room, where she hands him the cash. Kateryna, a detective from Ukraine's anti-corruption bureau, filmed multiple scenes like this over the course of a 9-month investigation. The bureau set out to look into illegal amber mining, a billion-dollar business that has ravaged forests in northwestern Ukraine. The detective posed as a foreign investor interested in potential changes to the law.
Her story was that she wanted to develop amber legally. At a certain point, she comes across these two MPs, Polyakov and Rosenblatt. For payment and using the money he receives, he promises to influence representatives of various public bodies. When he realizes that this woman has got money, he constantly wants to talk about this money. It becomes pretty unpleasant to watch.
He keeps asking for more and more. For exposing Rosenblatt, agent Kateryna has become something of a hero. Investigative journalists and activists collected money to buy her roses.
Янтарненький. И наверни мишку. Оно колется.
These flowers are not just from us journalists, they're from all kinds of people saying thank you for this amazing operation. We've never seen this before. We imagined that this is how things typically work. But now, thanks to agent Kateryna's hidden camera, we can see the rottenness and cynicism of everyday Ukrainian corruption.
Employees of the bureau were delighted.
You have to understand, Kateryna is undercover, so I cannot guarantee we can get the flowers to her. But we'll definitely make sure she hears about this.
Rosenblatt himself was not such a big fan. When the hidden camera videos were shown in a parliamentary committee meeting, he protested his innocence.
This fictional film has been edited and redacted. I don't know whose words those are, or who did the dubbing, or how it happened.
Unimpressed, the committee asked Parliament to cancel Rosenblatt's immunity from prosecution. On the day of the vote, a small but noisy group of protesters gathered outside to keep up the pressure. As prosecutors arrived inside the building, it seemed possible that Rosenblatt could be detained there and then.
Officers of the anti-corruption squad are waiting outside already. I saw them. A sufficient number.
Yet inside the chamber, Rosenblatt did not seem particularly worried. He had not fled the country, as some expected. Indeed, he stepped up to the podium twice to state his case.
Any provocation leading to bribery or to any crime is wrong. It's a violation of human rights.
Prosecutors stressed that Kateryna never provoked Rosenblatt into taking a bribe. It was always his idea. Yet Parliament still only partially lifted the MP's immunity, without authorizing his arrest.
He must have known that his colleagues would protect him and not allow for him to be detained. So he can keep coming to Parliament and go about his business.
He can enter and leave the country freely.
So what difference does it make to lift his immunity when everything's all there in the video?
Well, it means we can officially say he is a suspect, which we could not do before. And it does sound silly, but we can now carry out unauthorized surveillance for which we have no need. So there you go. Some of this seems pretty surreal to me.
Disappointed, Verdinskik wrote up the story for the front page of the news weekly Novoye Vremya and gave it a bitterly ironic headline. July the 11th, Parliament legalizes bribery and theft in Ukraine.
Well, today's Focus report coming from our correspondent Gulliver Cragg in Ukraine. We'd like to note that the order of the hidden camera footage in the report doesn't always follow a chronological order. For a full link to the details, you can, of course, visit our website, france24.com. Well, to talk more, Cyril Brett is an associate professor at Sciences Po Paris. Thanks very much for your time today. I mean, we saw in that report corruption taking place firsthand with undercover reporting. From what you know of Ukrainian corruption, are there many MPs conducting themselves in that kind of way?
That's for sure. Fight against high-profile corruption is a long shot in Ukraine. It's been the case for 2 decades now, since the independence from the USSR in 1991. But what strikes me in that very good, excellent, as usual report on Ukraine on France 24 is that it shows, on the one hand, the deeply rooted corruption of the MPs of the political class linked with the oligarchs, but it also hints at the fact that petty corruption, everyday life corruption at every stage of the small businesses, of the everyday life of ordinary citizens, take place in Ukraine. It also shows that the first steps of the NABU, National Anti-Corruption Bureau, are hard to take, but they are taken. Several steps have been taken by the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian administration, under the pressure of the IMF and the European Commission as well.
I mean, what we're seeing in some cases is the Anti-Corruption Bureau essentially banging its head against a wall. So very clear evidence, very clear footage of somebody conducting themselves in a corrupt manner. But nonetheless, they're not arrested. They show up at Parliament and they're absolutely free to carry on their daily lives as they were before the footage emerged.
Yes, of course. It's a long shot because if you spot a case of corruption, you have to put it to trial and you have to go to the jurisdictions. And once again, you can be faced with corruption within the jurisdictions. It means that the fight against corruption in Ukraine, but it's the case as well in Russia, in the Middle East, in Western Europe as well, is a systemic war, a systemic fight coming from the journalists, the media, of course, it's obvious here, from the administration, but also from the civil society. It's been the case during the Euromaidan protests, and comes also from the outside, from the international organizations, whether governmental or NGOs. So it's a systematic fight. It will take a very long time, especially in Ukraine, but we have to give justice to Ukraine. Ukraine has put in place many transparency programs.
Well, I was just about to ask you about that. President Poroshenko saying that, you know, one of his key aims was essentially to stamp out corruption. How do you assess his efforts to date?
The results are, of course, and obviously limited, of course. And President Poroshenko has no choice in that matter because he receives subsidies and funds from the IMF and from the European Commission. And the first emphasis put by those international organizations is fight against corruption. So the results are limited for the time being, but the first steps have been taken. And high-profile corruption cannot obliterate and overshadow the fact that in everyday life you can encounter progresses. in many sectors of the Ukrainian life.
I mean, in terms of the other side of the coin, and we saw this MP in the report, some accusing the Anti-Corruption Bureau of being unjustified in its approach to dealing with members of parliament.
Yes, it can be undermined by those criticisms, but you have to take the first step at some time. You have to begin with something. So the MPs are under the public scrutiny, under the TV shows. So it has to be taken in that sphere as well. It has to be begun in the parliament. But for the ordinary Ukrainian, it has to be taken in the everyday business life concerning education, healthcare, of course, and custom taxes.
OK, so a difficult battle, you say, but a fight absolutely worth forging ahead with. Cyril Brett, you're an associate professor at Sciences Po Paris. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.